ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us for this session. So allow me to, because of time, to introduce my panel. I'll start with Levis Nderitu, who is our global head for diversity, equity, and inclusion for PATH. Maybe tell us something very brief about you.
Hello. This is problematic. I can use yours. Hi, everyone. My name is Levis Nderitu. I work for PATH. PATH is a global health nonprofit. I lead the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. Donna, what do you want me to say?
One fun fact about you.
Oh my God. I used to sing. I thought I would sing and produce music, but clearly, here we are.
Thank you. Next, allow me to introduce Kelly Bentley, the co-founder and group CEO of DX5. One fun fact about you.
Mics don't like me this week. Don, one fun fact. I am Zimbabwean. I live in South Africa and have a business in Kenya. So I feel like I'm truly African.
Great, great. Next, Kevin Isaac, who is also a cancer survivor and a champion for mental health. One fun fact about you.
I'm dying.
Sorry?
I'm dying.
Oh, okay.
It's a fun fact.
Okay. We celebrate it?
Yes, definitely.
Good
It's
stuff.
part of life.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Next, Divine Muragijimana, a strategy consultant in brand marketing and ESG matters. Fun fact.
Fun fact, I used to be a dance instructor.
So you and Levis should start maybe a dance group and a music group. And lastly, Fiona Asonga, the Chief Executive Officer of Textbook.
Morning, everybody. Fun fact about me is I attempted to organize autism awareness last year and organized a marathon. And it was a very interesting experience and journey that I hope I'll be able to share during the panel.
Thank you. And I'm your moderator today. My name is Donna Rege, head of Safaricom Women in Technology. And fun fact, I like eating the small insects from Luyaland when it rains. Those ones, yes, when they're fried, I love eating those things.
They're called white ants.
They're called what?
Yes.
Chiswa, that name sounds better.
They're white ants.
Thanks. So today's panel is about the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the country. So we're just asking ourselves, is it dead or is it alive? And we'd like to explore what the different organizations are doing from the different sectors and possibly try to understand why there's so many conversations happening, there's so many initiatives, but we're wondering, is there impactful action post those many initiatives and conversations and policies? So maybe I start off by giving a definition of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And diversity for us, especially at Safaricom, we refer to it as the many ways that we are different. The existence of the variations of different characteristics in a group of people. For us, equity is giving people opportunities needed to reach equal outcomes. And lastly, inclusion for us is state of being made part of something bigger. So there's several types of DEIs. There's the visible bits and there's the invisible ones. I hope today we'll be able to cover all aspects, even if it's in bits. And I think for me, critical to keep in our minds is the fact that there's some features of DEI. There's the segregations, there are the exclusions, there are inclusions, and there's also the bit where there's integration. So let's keep that in mind as we go over to the questions. So I think for me, my first question would be, based on the initiatives that are already currently running, you will notice that we have gotten to a point where there's some inclusion happening. So for example, for our women, even for people living with disabilities, what does that look like? And this question goes to Kelly. What should women not do, women who have actually been included or people living with disability who have been included, what should they not do while they are in those positions?
Thank you for the question, Donna. I think it's a really good question because I think asking what not to do is very rarely asked. We often ask what we should be doing. I think it's a very broad question, so you could say a lot around it. But I remember on one of our stages, Faith saying, don't pour the tea. And I don't know if anybody was at that session, but she said, in boardrooms as a woman, and when you've kind of got into the boardroom and you're sitting at the table, don't pour the tea. And whilst I agree with that, I think you should ask for tea with 2 sugars. So don't pour the tea, but I'll have 2 sugars, thanks. Because I think sometimes we can isolate ourselves as individuals or women who've got into the boardroom, for example, who've reached some kind of equitable situation, and we become quite hard. So we've had to put up this brave face to get to where we are, and that becomes our norm. So I think the big thing for me is to try and remain soft, and try and, when you go through all this adversity in life, and Kevin and I were just chatting on the side here, but when you do go through adversity like that, yes, you need to not be the person that is always pouring the tea, right? Yes. But you need to ask for a cup of tea, so you need to still, get involved and not isolate yourself by becoming too hard and not approachable. And, just because you've got to the top, you have to share it. That's only when it's worthwhile.
Great. So please remember, don't pour the tea, stay soft, maintain the softness. So I think with that, maybe just on the same, I would ask maybe Fiona and a rejoinder on the same. What does it look like? What do you think we should not do at the top?
I think that a lot of the times when we get to the top fighting, trying to get into our spaces, then we forget that our feminine side has something unique we are bringing to the table. And we should not forget that. The way teams of women work and the way teams of men work is different because naturally we are wired a bit differently. And so one of the things that I have encouraged other women at the top to do is to always remember that at the end of the day, you are the one who comes in to reduce the level of testosterone in that room. So let your natural thinking and views come forth. And in that process, you'll find that you help the men think differently so that they are able to then accommodate a different perspective. Because at the top, really, it's about strategic thinking and strategic issues and strategic positioning. And you sort of want to be able to contribute to the same strategy, just with a different approach.
Great. So bringing in the authenticity, yes, Divine.
I think, and this might be controversial for guys, there is Rosa Parks, if anybody knows American history, I think women, when they get to the top, or if you find yourself in a place of privilege, you adopt the Rosa Parks syndrome. Right, and you become the representation of everything that is DEI in the business. For example, if you're a woman in power, therefore you become a representative of everything that's happening around women in the business, and you forget yourself. Therefore, you end up, and we've seen where women really get into depression, and they get now they end up with a mental disability because of the pressure they put themselves in, and they want to be the representative of every woman issue in the business, everything, and you essentially end up not being productive. You forget the reason why you got the job is to actually make sure the business is thriving in all aspects. So you have to be able to speak both on, of course, DEI issues if there are issues that need to be addressed, but don't become the Rosa Parks of the business.
Great. So I think this leads us to the next question. I think this goes to Kevin. So for those of us who have been included, we have talked about what not to do. What do you think we should do?
Be more inclusive.
When we are included and people are inclusive of us.
Because I think, for example, and I'm in UI UX, which looks at users.
Yes.
For example, I'm in a wheelchair,
yes.
Unfortunately, for I had a surgery last Friday, so I can't walk too well. You saw what happened coming here. And we are talking about diversity. So that tells you one thing. The tech field is a very great field because it rewards skills. This enables you to hire anyone,
Yes.
regardless of what they look like, where they come from, as long as show me what you can do. Get paid as much as you can.
Yeah.
So most of the most successful, differently abled human beings in the world, who are the richest and the most successful, they used to be in tech.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most of them have passed away. When you were talking about women, there's a bias. There's a book called Invisible Women. I don't know if you've read it. And it's a factual book. In tech, we look at facts, right? Yeah. But do we use these facts to include others, to be more inclusive? How many blind people do you know are in Kenya? M-Pesa, is it inclusive of blind people?
So we are trying. We have a
yes.
braille watch. Yes, we're trying, but we're not there yet.
So there's a lot happening, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I love that companies in tech are at the forefront.
Yes.
In terms of leadership, women who get on top, it takes a lot. Everyone knows, everyone on this panel knows, it takes everything for you to get to that level. And then you still will be asked, okay, so how is it like being a mother and
how do you balance it?
How do you balance it? Men are never asked that question.
Yes.
So we keep talking about being inclusive up until it happens to you. So you never know until you're in those actual shoes. I discovered I had cancer 2 years ago. It's a roller coaster. At one point, you know you're doing well, you're done. The next you're told, we're now stage 4. Next you're told you're now dying. If you're not in a good mental space, what do you do? So being inclusive also means being in a good mental space so that you know yourself better, so that you can include others better. Yeah.
Wow, that's a powerful one. Know yourself better to include others better. I think with that, allow me to just move from that a bit. When we talk about DEI, we have these big definitions just like the ones I shared. But exactly what does it look like for each and every one of you? What does belonging mean to you? And I think I'll start with Levi's, then to Fiona, then I can cross over. Yes, you can.
Yeah, thank you. So when I think about belonging, for me, it's the ability to bring your whole self to the workplace. Most of the time, we leave parts of ourselves outside. If you are a mother, you leave your motherhood outside. If you are someone with disability, maybe perhaps disability that is not visible, you leave it outside. Most of the time, people leave parts of themselves outside. But the ability to just be your authentic self and to bring that to the workplace, I think for me that is belonging. And I hope that our organizations, global or local organizations, can create those climates where differences actually thrive, right? Because indeed we are all different, and I think the whole essence of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to leverage and to tap into all our differences towards greater good or impact within the business.
Thanks for that, Fiona.
For me, I think that the whole issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion means that we are able to have appropriate representation within the work environment of the differences that exist within our society, whether we understand them or not. And therein is where I think lies the biggest challenge, because organizations tend to have these policies that they have borrowed from national policies or constitutions or wherever it is, and they're trying to just tick the box. But there are some things you can't just tick the box about. You have to be very intentional and purposeful to make sure that they are being well addressed and everybody is included. Now, inclusion does not mean that you have your way, you know. It means basically you are able to be at the part of the conversations, part of the processes, included and factored in the processes. Case in point, about 12 days ago I had eye surgery. I never thought I would be unable to see. I've not been able to be on my laptop for quite a while. And then I realized I actually need a laptop. They might have my laptop configured so that it produces sound when I touch the keys. I know what I'm typing. So now my hearing has had to be more attentive as I type because it recites to me what I'm typing and the word I've typed and autocorrects. And that was like, okay, thank God I have a machine that has that. How many people who are visually challenged are able to have that experience? You know? Are we in the tech space really, really inclusive? We are very comfortable with apps and things that we can do and see because, yes, we are able to see them. For the first time, I couldn't even use my own phone. Why? I couldn't see. So someone had to literally read for me the text messages, and then I would, oh, okay. And then I asked them, can you just configure this one? Because I know it has Google Assistant can do a number of things for me. Can we configure and have it do the things it's supposed to do? Why the tools are there, but we just don't make them, we don't talk about it. We don't encourage society to make use of them. We need to have a way of making this discussion on diversity and inclusion move to the next level. For the last almost 6 years, we've talked about diversity and inclusion, referring to women. I'm not saying we stop or it's a bad thing. I'm just saying we need to now look at other areas. We have, like Isaac has mentioned, we have benefited as an industry from a certain kind of mental challenge, and we are such serious beneficiaries that we don't even think about it. When you look at our space, if you look at the amount of effort it takes to do coding, to write code, it needs your mind tweaked in a particular way. And we tend to have autistic people who are coders the best at that. Why? They have it in them. They are built for it. But do we recognize them? Do we appreciate them? When was it we last awarded coders in our industry? Where are these coders, by the way? Guys who can do system integration to a level that we really, and we can see, yes, they're not full because they have got these challenges. And of course, their communication is a challenge, but that is who they are. Because of the spectrum of autism, they're probably going through. So then how do we make it all inclusive? The onus is on us to make sure that in whatever environment, in whichever way we are doing our things, we are able to have within the business environment a way of making sure everybody comes in wholly and feels part of the processes completely.
Great. So I guess for me that reminds me something. So we are inclusive, but are we really integrated? That's a question that I think we need to ask ourselves. So as I move over onto my right side, I want to twist the question a bit. Is the position of DEI rightfully in HR? That has been triggered by Fiona's response.
Okay, so let me tackle that first and then go into the HR part. So generally, and I will take this from a personal perspective. So I am, and you know, I'm a single woman who had to be who became an executive, and I learned even for that. Actually, single women are excluded from work, right? We come with labels and such things. So what does inclusion actually mean? Or when you talk about DEI, one, are you seen at work? Are you heard? Not just listening, are you actually in an environment where you're heard? Are you in an environment where you're celebrated for who you are? I mean, Levi is talking about your whole self. Are you celebrated for who you are as a human being, as a contributor to the organization? And lastly, are you actually growing? And the beauty thing about DEI is that most organizations look at DEI as a nice thing to do, which is we have policies that allow people to be their best, for example, but actually they don't look at the economics of actually DEI and the advantages that organizations get by actually having a very specific DEI strategy that is specific to the organization. So essentially, and growth is one of those areas, because when you work in an inclusive environment, in a diverse environment, in where there's equity, and equity is actually celebrated in the organization, you find that people are able to work with everyone. You find people that are able to do their best work because they are able to learn from each other, because it's not just one, like I want to use the word vanilla, so you don't have one version of an individual in the business, and therefore you find that there's such richness in the actual work that is being done in the organization. As far as the HR, and I think this is the biggest mistake that organizations make. They think that DEI is HR. So they put it in HR, and this is not to offend anyone who is in HR here, but HR in Kenya, for example, they are not trained to look at DEI from a strategic perspective. And therefore, if DEI is not being looked at from a strategy that the leader, the business, and if we take up, like we just take a chapter from MasterCard, where they really made DEI as a strategy, and at the end, at least it took about 10 years, where MasterCard became outperformed for a decade, because they made DEI part of their strategy. And the leaders, from the CEO to their board to the executive, were very clear about that DEI was a competitive advantage for them. And that's when DEI actually works. If you put it in HR, the policies, they'll do the same thing. It's vanilla. It's, do we have enough women? What's the ratio of women to men? Do we have leave? Do we have leave day? Our people taking leave, and then you get those nice emails. Please take your leave. Don't forget to take your 21 days, and then they cancel your leaves in, in about maybe 30 days into the next year, your leaves are cancelled. They make sure they remind you of that. So they look at that vanilla aspect of DEI, but then you forget that DEI is it's about that person and being able to lead the person. And that's hard. It's not something that HR can actually implement. It takes a manager, it takes the leader, it takes the entire organization for actually DEI to work.
Yeah. Leadership.
I think it's a bit like technology, right? I think technology doesn't just sit with the CIO. I think it sits with everybody across the executive team. So, Donna, what does it mean to belong? I think when I feel like I truly belong in a place or with a group of people, I feel like they give me the opportunity to grow. I feel like they give me the opportunity to be myself even when it might not be perfect to them. And, people say don't judge. It's inherent in human nature to judge, right? Somebody looks different to us but I think being aware of that judgment, being self-aware of that judgment, allows you to address it and kind of overcome it. But in that, I think something that happens often, and again, it goes back to that not being hard, is we have to take accountability. If we, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, Kevin, but if we ourselves are disabled in some way, shape, or form, we also have accountability and responsibility to include others. And I think sometimes that comes back to that being hard. You fought so hard. And I think my message would be, don't let them make you hard. Because it sits with you at the end of the day. So if you've been through a whole lot of trial and tribulation, if you become hard as a result of it, it does affect other people, but it affects you most of all. It's like sitting with hate or anger or, so I think being included, but being deliberate about the fact that you are also including others. And you're not going to get it right. But, if people try, I think it's better, right? It's like a language. If you go to France and the French cannot, parlez-vous français, if you don't try, and even here, if you try and speak Swahili as an outsider, the effort is what should be rewarded. And I think we've got to stop talking the language. We've got to stop talking the action. Like, what actions are we taking? And I think trying is the first step. A lot of people are nervous to try because they won't get it right, or they don't think about it. But just it's the small things. The small things. I'd love to hear what
Let's
you
try
think
with the
about that.
small things. Yes, Kevin.
So the thing about, and sorry to use this again, about cancer is you undergo chemo, and everybody thinks chemo is losing your hair, but it's so much more, so much more. You end up changing your glasses, having to do LASIK surgery, for example, and then now I understand what you're saying about being blind at some point. So you realize you really need your right eye at some point, or you really need your left eye. So by the time you're able to see again, you start thinking of the rest. Like, if it was such a struggle for me, how about the rest? We were doing a pitch sometime this year, and our brilliant idea was that we were to present Safaricom involved blind people. And we were in a room talking and sticky notes and all that. And then I asked the people around, do you know any blind people, any blind person? And no one knew any blind person. So I decided to find where blind people are. So I went to an institute somewhere on Langata Road. So I went there, and in tech, if you're creative and you're colorful, you enter reception and you expect people to notice you, and you start talking and being chatty. And we had a real nice conversation. And then she said, now you can move here so that I can see you better. So all this time, the receptionist was blind, and I didn't notice. So then when you experience it, then you're able to start include. So I've never had a ramp in my house, so now I have a ramp. You've never experienced your bladder not working normally at some point. So now you have to find adult diapers at mid-30s. And then you have to know which are the best adult diapers. So next time you start including others. If there's a conversation on social at one point about men having sanitary towels in their houses if you don't have a partner or anything. And it was something like, why don't you have that in your house? It doesn't mean that you need a woman to have it in your house. What about female visitors? But when you have a girlfriend, then you start noticing, oh, I need this in the house. So only when you start experiencing some things, then you start appreciating and including others. I think what you said about HR, MasterCard did the thing of everyone. So it should be the same in organizations. Most HRs in Kenya, on LinkedIn, you'll notice they've all changed their names into, this is not against HR. People person, I make happy people at work, whatever. They have all this kind of fancy, but they're still HR. They still manage human resource. In tech, the people you fight with the most, HR. And finance. So it's, I don't think the office needs to be there. They can be enforcer, but everyone needs to understand what does it mean to be inclusive.
It doesn't mean that HR is not important, yeah?
No, it is. HR is very important.
Yes,
Very, very
yes.
important. Our salaries come from there. HR is very important.
And also one
And
more
all
thing.
other benefits.
About, for example, chronic disease. I'll put it into chronic disease. How many leave days do you have in your companies? Sick leave days? 30. Do you think 30 is enough for a chronic person? So what happens after that? They have to use their leave days, which will run out. And then salary. And insurance is money.
I think it depends on the organization because
Yes, it depends on the organization.
At TESPOC, we do it differently.
Yep.
We have put in our policy for days out, compassionate, and then chronic illnesses, and now those are subject to the CEO looking at the situation and making a decision. Then also, even when we do our insurance cover, we've got the premium policy, cover inpatient, outpatient. Then we've got a fund. Insurance manages for us another kitty where we take care of things that insurance says they can't take care of. So like yesterday, we were discharging a wife of a staff member who had open heart surgery at Kenyatta University Hospital. And insurance, the normal premium inpatient was exhausted. The NHIF came through with a significant bill, a reduction of 450,000, which was like, wow, they can give that much. Then now we had to tap into our fund to offset a bill that made the family did not have to do fundraising. No mchangos, no nothing. The girl goes home, and now we are saying, okay, her outpatient can do the rest as she goes in and out for reviews. So it depends on the organization. And
Are you hiring?
I was about to say, can we clap for TESPOC? Can we clap for TESPOC? Because I don't think there's another organization I've had who have chronic leave days. They have the normal sick leave days, then maybe you go for a tribunal to seek more if you need and stuff.
No, it's not a tribunal.
Yours
is ours for us, the medical reports. You see, when you're going through your medical and your insurance starts, the insurance starts giving me, they give me a red flag on this is going to need a bit more. So we do take care of their bit more. And then if it is chronic, we still support. Because we say we cover our families, we cover staff and their dependents. We cannot cover a dependent halfway because she's not working with me, that is the husband. We can't do that. So we just do the right thing. And for chronic support, like this lady has had support from us for almost a year now, as we're trying to figure out India, Kenya, where, what. We became part of that whole conversation, and giving the husband time off to go and take care of his wife, because we realize when you're two parents as couple and one is down, then the other stands in to try and balance so then he's needed more at home. So thanks to COVID, people understand working from home. So we tell work from home, these are the deliverables for this week. Let us know which ones you can do, which ones you can't, and life goes on. People get sick all the time. Today we're in a society where cancer is with us. And we have to, at the corporate level, we have to find ways of making sure we give staff support for, in the event that someone gets cancer, how do we deal with it? How do we ensure that if they want to work, they can still work, they can still get the support they need? Because cancer is not something that will go through like the labor laws. 1 year, you're now out of office. And no, these are things that take time. And there has to be plans in place that make sure we deal with people in a humane way.
Great. I think we're running short of time, so I think to allow us to be able to close well, I'll allow a parting shot from each and every one of us. I think I'll start with Kevin.
Do not make others conform. Do not be the jailer that we all know. Be better, include more.
I think be deliberate. I think in everything. I think be deliberate in trying to be inclusive, be deliberate in trying to understand where somebody else is coming from, and be deliberate in your own, if you have some kind of disability or a space where you need to have more equity, be deliberate in how you're going to get there. And just remember that there's people coming behind you. So pave the way by being deliberate.
I think my parting shot is the good business means being a good place to work. Being good business means actually doing good. And I think there is a lot of value on organizations figuring out what is the business that they want to create, what's the impact that they want to have, and what type of employees they want to have in the organization. And then from leadership across the business, even making sure that the cleaners, the people who clear your tables, the cooks and everybody the people you bring in the organization are very intentional, and you create that as your strategy as opposed to a policy.
Great. Fiona?
I think I'll say, parting short is a message to all of you who are in this room. Go back to your organizations, sit with your strategic leads, and find out how can you strategically ensure that there is diversity and inclusion within your organizations. And that's been holistic, because today you're here and you're in one piece and you're healthy. You don't know how you're going to be tomorrow. You don't know what is going to be happening tomorrow that will need you to be included still in the workplace because you're passionate about what you do, and to be included with a challenge that you're having to live with for a significant time. So the onus is on us to be intentional and to make sure, even as we have that conversation, having in place mechanisms for accountability, for diversity and inclusion is very important. I developed some for ICANN, the global body that manages the internet. I led the diversity working group for mechanisms on accountability for accountability mechanisms for diversity and inclusion at ICANN. And so that helped me a lot in putting those in textbook. But we need to be able to replicate that within other organizations across the world, across the country, and make sure that we are the instruments of that diversity.
Levis?
Oh, thank you. It's actually working. Yes, finally, at the close. For me, I think it's thinking about who is missing at the table. If you're an all-men, sort of leadership, ask yourself a question: who's actually missing at the table? If you're all straight people, right? Who is missing at the table? So that question is important because you're missing a perspective, and you need that perspective. For Google to come up with Google Assistant and all of this wonderful technology that Safaricom also has, where, catering to say people with disability, for example, it's because they had to include and ask themselves who is missing at the table. So I think that's a very important one. And finally, is to think about the world has moved. We're in a very globally connected world. And diversity and inclusion is what enables us to cross-collaborate with different people across the world. And the talent is becoming younger and younger. We are dealing with Gen Zs, right? And so part of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to think about how do we attract this talent and how do we keep this talent within the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I think mine is diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, and inclusion is an action, but belonging is the expected outcome. Thank you.